This is the Police Training HQ podcast. We are your headquarters for all things training and resources for Texas law enforcement. And welcome back to the Police Training HQ podcast, episode 12. We are back. And Mike, we've had an absolutely busy last week. I was doing some teaching from crime scene.
Yeah, well, both of us teaching
Yeah.
some classes and then the recruit classes. But someone, also known as you, took a little break toward the end of the week to go get some training of your own. And I'm curious to hear what you thought about it.
That's right. Yeah, you're right. We had a busy last week. You and I were forcefully separated to carry out our teaching duties elsewhere. But the crime scene class went amazing. I'm going to get back to it because I selfishly and without shame went to a blue to gold training, which I've was looking forward to, an advanced search and seizure class up in Southlake, one of our hosting agencies. So we know that it's a beautiful venue for sure. Maybe I should start before I go there. The class went well. Our buddy Mike Carroll came in Thursday and spoke about some case studies, and the class really loved it. And I think the class reviews went well as well. You did a arrest, search, and seizure up at the regional academy as well, right?
Crime scene.
That's
I had
right.
A crime
That's right.
scene
Crime
class
scene
as well. So we were crime scening it together.
We dual crime scenes. Absolutely.
That's right.
Yeah. So we it was a great week, especially after our last episode. Was definitely taking some of those thoughts and trying to put it in to practice as we normally do. But at the end of the day, yeah, one of the definite highlights last week was getting to go spend some time with Anthony Bandiero. He says senior legal instructor. I believe it's his company, if I'm not misrepresenting. But I imagine some of our listeners will be familiar with Blue to Gold.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of officers that read his books, watch his videos, and attend his classes. And I've heard nothing but good things about the training. I love the videos. I think they're a great little resource for officers. I like the style of someone poses a question, a real world question, and he can break it down and help not just the person asking the question, but other officers who may have the same situations get a better handle on how to deal with that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was good. I mean, I don't want to just go off into it yet, but the structure of class went well. I mean, this is general, obviously, but the structure of class is very fluid, even with some bumps in the morning where some of the technology wasn't quite cooperating. We still had I would say a darn good class, and being that what it was. The term advanced search and seizure, I can say for certain that it was true to the name. It was pretty advanced.
So I guess my question to you, and sort of the approach I'd like for us to take this week, is maybe talk about some of these really high quality classes and whether or not just attending those classes moves the needle a lot for an officer. And can we explore, well, I guess first and foremost, is it likely that simply attending a class, you're going to walk away with certainly not a level of mastery, but it's like, what are we gaining from a class, even some of the best classes. And so I kind of put a list together of some classes before we got started, and maybe we can integrate some of the thoughts related to those
Hmm.
and tie those to maybe some of the potential issues that arise if we don't do something with the information. And so I think force science, I've been to force science, human factors in the use of force. I think usefulness in the field at every level is pretty high, but you're there for a week. I believe it was a week. Um, and there's a lot of information coming your way, but it's like any sort of class. If you're not putting that information into practice, are we really retaining it? Blue to gold, street cop training is another one that I see come up quite a bit. Caliber press, they they've been around for years.
Yeah, a long time.
Um, Alert, I mean, I think it's a world renowned training, but are we using it enough outside the those 16 hours we spend uh, taking the class? The Gracie DT type training, again, world renowned, but how many officers or how many agencies are doing something with that?
Hmm.
I think I think it's Wicklander, one of the interview and interrogation
Hmm.
courses, and you can go on and on and on and on. And
Right.
there is without question high quality training that is coming out of those classrooms. The issue, like I said, is are we simply going because we've heard the class is great, but then how many officers, when they leave that class, actually are putting it to use?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to go back to that list that you gave, because I if it's okay, I'd like to dote just a little bit more on Blue to Gold, because I think it's worth mentioning that, one, I think that he was preparing for 100 people in the class, which is unique, in and of itself. I think maybe we wound up with 80 or less. Um, the type of training that he's putting in, yeah, you're right. It's the style of it is going to be some type of, maybe Texas specific, maybe not, um, issue or Fourth Amendment, issue that falls squarely in its jurisprudence. And then the style was asking whether or not we had an answer to resolve it, being a search, an arrest. Is this a private area? So on and so forth, which you and I would consider us experts in that field. And yeah, it's good. I mean, it all, even the classes that you listed was all amazing. And Anthony did just an incredible job, especially with the amount of problems he had in the morning, engaging students, having a PowerPoint that flowed, having real world, and not just real world, but also relevant answers to where you can actually take notes and be focused enough to where you can use it. But I think it's worth mentioning, and I'm sure we're going to get into it a little bit deeper. Is I just think good training, top notch training, it doesn't always equal good memory, though.
No, and we kind of preach the retention piece to all training. I think the fact that there is practical application involved, we certainly move it toward retention.
Right.
But I think even some of my own choices over the years, you look to go to these different training classes. I know back when I was in investigations, I traveled to Oklahoma City to take bloodstain pattern analysis, and then I went back again for an advanced class, and I went to crime scene reconstruction. to only talk about it in classes, and because you just don't get the opportunity to use
Mhm.
that as much as you probably would need to hang on to the information.
Right.
And I also think about, even outside of law enforcement, I used to be big into CrossFit, still think it's great. One of the things, and I don't know whether it's changed or not, but you could go to a 2-day weekend seminar after you've been doing CrossFit for however long, and magically you're a coach. Mm, I don't know that
Mm.
you have a solid enough foundation from a 2-day seminar, so to speak, to do much of anything
Yeah.
that, or at least you should be doing. And there's probably tons of examples of, I want to go to this training, I want to go to that training. But the reality is, are you going to use it? And if you are going to use it, you're going to have to invest the time and the reps, I think, to hang on to it.
Yeah. Well, uh, I was going to ask you a question. I feel like I know the answer. But yeah, I mean, whether or not it's a check the box model, or, I'm doing these amount of courses or this amount of study, but I only want to reach a goal where I'm a coach or I'm a teacher or I'm an instructor or whatever. I mean, if you had to quantify it without us getting into it too deep, um, I mean, how much do you think that this actually sticks? I mean, is it a little or a lot?
Oh, I think a little. I do think that one of the goals that you see from some folks, probably in our profession, is they want that cool little T-shirt that's got instructor across the back.
Yeah.
Um, it's like, oh, I've earned my T-shirt. People do a lot of things for a T-shirt.
Yeah.
They'll
And
go to instructor school or whatever, but um, it's got to be bigger than the T-shirt.
I love a t-shirt, by the way, too.
Well, I'll get you an instructor T-shirt.
Well, finally. But I love a t-shirt, and you're right. In fact, if I could share one of the I guess it's a pejorative. It's not too bad, but one of the things we used to say about police officers and firemen, that we felt like we were on shift with, that didn't really do their part or didn't train to a standard. We called them t-shirt cops and t-shirt firefighters. They went to the academy only to look the part, but never played the part. Never did the work. And I find that interesting that we and I don't think we've ever spoke about that before. Um, but I think that that's a good model, because you're right. I mean, that you get this T-shirt, you get the coin, the little challenge coin. You feel good about yourself. I feel like Alert is dancing on the same model, where, because it's legislatively mandated, the training's good. I mean, the training's really good. It has high applicability for the field, but they are spitting out instructors left and right to meet the need.
Yeah, well, and I want to back up or backtrack just a little bit. And we talked about this before we hit the record button. I think a lot of the classes that people go to, the information doesn't get used or doesn't get applied. However, I think that there are certain classes, and I'll give you an example. I think firearms instructor, if you go to that class, most people, I think, want to try to apply that. And some of the other, driving instructor might be another example of that they're actually going to apply that, or probably apply it at a greater rate than just the officer going to a particular class that's advanced or whatever,
Yeah.
little add-on we want to put with that. But I'd also say that probably those terms um, are in somewhat a marketing thing too. It's like
Ooh.
we have an advanced instructor, and it catches people's eyes. Sometimes it scares them away. It's like, I had enough trouble with basic instructor. I don't want to try an advanced instructor. But I think we owe more to the student when we say it's going to be advanced.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and then not only that, but then what's the, our question in our advanced instructor school is, what was advanced about that? I worry a lot about that part. And I don't want to sound sarcastic whenever I ask that question to our students, but it's like, hey, this is an advanced instructor class. Do you want the T-shirt or the coin, or do you want to answer the question, what was advanced about that? So that way we know, you, Mike and I, for the listeners' point of view, we know that you're taking something advanced away from that, or like you said, is it just another notch on the belt?
well, I think that it's got to be more than the notch. But just what motivates people is obviously different
Yeah,
within individuals. I I want to go to a class because I like to learn.
yeah,
But I fall victim to the exact same thing we're talking about today.
mhm,
You go to training, if you don't do something with it, then it starts to fade. And I don't regret any training ever,
mhm,
um, but I certainly have probably let a lot of it slip away simply because I wasn't doing things to reinforce it.
right,
Now, some I don't say not ignorance to it, but maybe that's the right word. I think sometimes we have an ignorance to how to retain stuff,
oh yeah,
especially because I mean, that's our theme with most of our training is helping you retain it because we're building in things that are useful for students to hang on to the information. Now, they still have to invest their own time and energy, but I think sometimes there's an assumption that we go to this class, which was kind of the theme of today. We go to a class and the instructor opens up the top of our head, sprinkles training in, closes it, and we walk away with newfound knowledge and a newfound skill. And high speed training or mediocre training or not so good
yeah,
training, it's all sort of going to fall into the same retention problems
yeah.
that are human, are part of being human.
Yeah, well, there's a really important sector of this, if you don't mind. I don't know if you're okay with me jumping into the deep end real quick, but I thought about something. Training only works if you do.
I like
Training
that.
only works if you do, meaning the student. So it could be mediocre training. I still think that there's a learning opportunity because, as you and I've discussed before, there's a really important 24 to 48 hour window, sort of right after training, especially if you're only tackling those things that whether or not it's specific problems or whatever. There's always a theme to trainings and stuff. And those 24 to 48 hour windows, I'd like to offer you a math, like a formula. Would you be willing to take that on?
Um, you can do public math. I'm not, but
Yeah, well, I'm
have
going to
at
make
it.
this simple actually because I did not do public math very well. I'll remind the listeners I'm from East Texas. I played football, no math required. I um I want to introduce R plus R equals R. R plus R equals R. Repetition plus retrieval equals retention.
I like that.
Yeah.
R plus R equals R.
Yeah. And I
Is that R to the third power? Would
it's
that be? Oh
well
wait, no,
R
that's math.
yeah,
Hang on,
yeah.
no public math.
It's R cubed, for sure. Yeah, it's just it's that really important 24 to 48 hours that you still maybe even getting a little bit of dopamine from it. You're getting a little bit of, you're thinking about it. It's kind of like when we go to a really good conference. and you're ready to change all the policies at your office. You're riding high on knowledge, but the problem is you're only completing a part. Excuse me, a part of that formula that you need, because you're missing repetition. You're missing something else. You're not rereading, you're not re-explaining it or reworking the content. You're simply trying to remember it on its merits. And so I wonder, so why does retention decay so rapidly in your mind, as far as, you know, or I mean, is the opposite true, where you sort of have to force your brain to retrieve it and organize it?
Well, and we've sort of gone down this path before. I think it's attention
Hmm.
and the constant filter mode that your brain is in. It's like so much coming your way, hitting sort of that short term memory. And again, if you're not purposefully doing something to make your brain realize this is important, it
Yeah.
might filter it out. Don't assume that your brain will hang on to stuff that, I guess, in the moment you're like, oh, I should write this down. That sounds really important. Um, so I think that has a lot to do with it.
Mm.
And so I'm wondering if, kind of, since you've kind of opened up what I would say is a good sort of checklist of things,
Mm.
you think we could kind of go down. Um, so you're talking about reinforcement, probably what, 24 to 48 hours is where you'd want to really start hitting that heavy.
Absolutely.
I mean, maybe summarize it, or
Yeah. Yeah.
heck, the teach backs, man. I'm telling you, maybe you come back and say, "Hey, I went to this class. Can I tell you what I learned?" Or maybe you do a little briefing training about it. But I think that you got to hit it again within that 24 to 48 hour window.
Well,
Um,
the secret to that formula too, if you don't mind me adding to it, because I love memory aids, the R in repetition also stands for reread. The R in retrieval stands for re-explain, and the retention side of it is to rework it. And that's how I think we're gonna. I mean, we've said it before. I saved the R plus R equals R for this, because just to refocus, for me, to refocus the intention, we're not just talking about all training. We're talking about some of the best training that's available to us, and why we feel like in the midst of this training that there's no way that we can lose this, and that we can immediately, man, I can immediately use this, and this is amazing. This instructor's so good. But it really, and yeah, but it might be some like it might be repeating some of the things that you and I talk about, but we're not just talking about all instructors and all training here. We're talking about the very best. And I hope that by the end of this, that our listeners will see that even a class that's, in my view, was one of the top notch, the Blue to Gold, or I love the way that you discuss for science, in that way is, yeah, you can pay $1,000 to go to a nice class, but if you're not doing something with it, I think agency administrators or trainers should realize there's a real potential that about 50% of that's gone by the time that you blink.
right. Would you restate the R plus R? You had a little glitchy audio thing there. I just
I'm
want to
sorry
make
about
sure
that.
that no, I don't know. It could be connectivity, but if you would state those again, because I don't want somebody to go, but I didn't hear it. So
Yeah. Yeah, I've had some troubles here. Absolutely. So it's repetition plus retrieval equals retention, and part of that is also a mnemonic. The R in repetition stands for reread, plus the R in retrieval is re-explain, and then that equals retention, which also I look at it as reworking the problem. Just continuously rework it and coming up with your own way to translate it in your own language, and then build those mental reps that you and I both know builds confidence over time.
right. So I feel like this is um, useful on both sides from the instructor or the student. Because if you've taken a class and the instructor doesn't sort of focus on practical application and retention, then it sort of falls to the student to pick
Mhm.
that up and run with it. But so you'd say the reinforcement, but kind of what else? If we're like I said, I think of things in the checklist world.
Mhm.
What would be another way that the student can take this information and help them put it to work or remember it for future use, so to speak?
Yeah, well, the student has power. The student has a student, any student, no matter your level of understanding or knowledge, has authority. And what I mean, at least for me, what I mean is you can take knowledge, and even if you're in a structured classroom where maybe the perception is I don't control a lot of what's coordinated throughout the week, I still have that autonomy and authority to say, well, let me just throw this at you. Let's say you and I go to Blue to Gold again, and we're going to take the exact same class, and I'm almost certain that at the point where I would pick up new things every time I took it. But I mean, why couldn't I go to class now? I'm just going to change my role from Walt the instructor to Walt the. I'm just going to go down to Police Academy student, because actually one of our students did attend it, Wade. And what if I went to class and just set up like a tabletop discussion with my teammates? Would Do you see that as a way to start applying that in real time?
Yeah, I mean, it's putting it back into practical application, and that's kind of a proven
Yeah.
a tabletop, a walkthrough, or even a scenario. If we could design that, even sort of in our own heads. I mean, if you've been doing police work for a while, you've either been to probably similar calls or you have watched videos of calls. I guess if you're in a academy environment, but just sort of a mental walkthrough and applying some of the things I think certainly can open up a new little pathway into the brain, and for it
Oh
to
yeah.
hang on to it, being able to apply it in your brain. You got unlimited reps.
Yeah.
You can walk through and walk through and walk through and walk through, and there's a lot of science behind just mental rehearsal that how effective it can be.
Well, can I ask you a question? I'm specifically interested in force science because I've never taken one of their classes. I hate to admit because I do enjoy it, but you have a pretty lengthy career in investigations and every bit of that runs through it. Could you take in some of that information? I'm talking about building a checklist here. So we're saying set up a scenario. We're saying write it in some type of tabletop or something like that. But how about for the officer now or someone like with your experience? Could you take a past incident that maybe you've experienced and then apply that knowledge to a past incident and then say, all right, I'm going to rework that incident either in my head or on paper and apply those techniques to it? Because I can think about several times in the advanced search and seizure training where I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, or I hope the statute of limitations ran on that search or that arrest. Um, is that, in your mind, an effective strategy?
Absolutely. I think though I was kind of biased in how I viewed the training. I took it after I had moved into a training role, and everything about the training I sort of framed into how could I teach this better? For instance, there's a traffic stop study that they highlight. And there's a short video of it on YouTube. They're recording officers approaching a vehicle, and the role player at at some point during one of the approaches starts firing rounds at them, and you see this very common reaction of sort of retreat, trying to get your gun out. Some people tripping, some people just firing wildly, and it's pretty revealing about how that we react. And then I start to think about, well, then should we train that differently? Should we look at the passenger side approach? Should we look at, if I'm not mistaken, there were a couple of officers in that scenario that instead of retreating, they like went after the gun arm, and I don't think they would have taken rounds. I don't think they did take the simulated rounds. Obviously, they're using blanks, but um, or just how we train force or documenting force,
Mm,
and we look at some of the limitations that um, we are as humans, and that's a lot of that class is human performance focused. And if we can look at what we're doing good or what we need to improve based on the science of force, then that should certainly be integrated into our training. I know a lot of people take that because they investigate force after the fact. I think we should take that training also and turn it into preventative measures
mm.
where um, maybe if we do use force, then we can certainly document it and show the human limitations, or in the training environment, take it and um, build better scenarios, build
Mhm.
more realistic scenarios that would fall in line with truly what science tells us.
I think you've unlocked a really important point here that I haven't considered. I don't want to water down this training at all, or water down our I'm sorry our training, water down our discussion. Sorry, I've got training on the brain. Water down our discussion any, but I think you've unlocked something that if you don't mind, I'd like to throw it out into the ether. You mentioned a bias, and it had me thinking about when I go to a training, or even something as simple as a TCOL update, for instance. They give you best practices. Now you can, for what it's worth, you can attend it and check the box or whatever, but then there has to be a moment. I mean, most of us who are going to be students, that are going to switch over to the instructor role, you could very easily turn your brain off, though, sit in the back, wait until 4 p.m. and go. But it sounds like to me that when you take these classes, even now in an instructor role, and I bet you even when you were a captain and a chief, it sounds like your goal is to take these really great trainings, because I mean you don't want to waste the money either, but you want to take it back and say, I don't want to forget what worked on me as a student, and I want to pay that forward. Even if it's silly, some of these trainings have their own mnemonics and some of their own ways of teaching stuff. It's like having the open mindedness to say, you know what, I'm going to introduce, like in Blue to Gold, crew to our students. It's something that Anthony teaches: consent, recognized exception, or a warrant. It's an easy way to remember it. But if for some reason that sounds silly to me as an instructor, or, I don't like mnemonics because, it seems childish. That to me seems like a bias that would overthrow the purpose of some of these really well done trainings, even in our own, where we walk students down, memory palaces and stuff.
Well, I think it falls within our autonomy, relevance, and practical application. Your relevance might be different from my relevance.
Bingo.
And if we make an assumption at the front of the room that what we're presenting is relevant in the same way to everyone, then we could bias the direction of the training.
Mm.
So I'm not a practitioner anymore. You're not a practitioner anymore.
Mhm.
We're instructors. And so our audience, for the most part, are officers. And but I think about, we just both taught crime scene.
Mhm.
Sometimes that's a pretty hard sell, because if you, why are you here, at the beginning of class, if that's part of your Q&A or introductions, most of them are going to be, I'm here because I have to take it to get my intermediate certificate. Um,
Oh yeah.
so if if they're with an agency, there were several agencies that were in the class that I taught, and they have crime scene units.
Oh
They
wow.
pick up the phone or pick up the radio, and so again, it's a box that they're checking off. If you're in a small agency, maybe you're going to have some use for it,
Mm.
because if you're the officer, the chief, the detective, the jailer, and the crime scene technician all wrapped into one, then it might be more relevant to you. So, not all training is relevant to all people in the same way, and
Yeah.
you can have the best sales pitch, the best storytelling, to kind of hook the class, but I don't know that you're going to get everyone because of those varied levels of relevance. So, kind of back to my little checklist
Yeah.
analogy here. Um, so this We've talked about spaced recall.
Uh-huh.
So you took this class last week,
Mhm.
and if you were following sort of our model of kind of starting with almost immediately reinforcing some of it. And I know your brain spins search
Yeah.
and seizure probably 24 hours a day. So
Absolutely.
I can't imagine that wasn't already occurring. And also, just having that base that you already have of information, I think leads well to that. And then some application. Again, I think with sort of the base of search and seizure information that you already have, just starting to think about it in a scenario is probably something that's almost unconscious. So, but for the the student who doesn't nerd out on this stuff like we do,
Right.
um, if you're giving them sort of this checklist, how often should they be going back? I mean, this spaced recall, or could that be formal? If you're like, I really want to hang on to this information, I really want to learn to apply it. I mean, how often? What would be your sort of prescription for retention,
Yeah.
so to speak?
Well, yeah, I wanted to do my Christopher Walken impression, and say that the only
More
prescription is
cowbell?
more cowbell. It the prescription here is if you
Oh
want,
my!
yeah, yeah, if you want to be, I hate the way I laugh, and I'm sorry my listeners had to hear that. I it is absolutely imperative that you set reminders, whether it be a week, a month, 90 days, whatever. Um, each time that you do that, you revisit it. You build study flashcards. You quiz it. You discuss it with your peers. You make prompts, whatever it is. You have to visit it weekly, monthly, and so on and so forth. For instance, it seems redundant for us to take academy students and have them start reading case law within a couple of weeks of class. In fact, most classes I require them to go on the TDCAA website, Texas District and County Attorneys Association, or OEA, or something like that, and I have them to build out a flashcard system of cases they read, and I want them to try to read 3 a day. Why? Well, for the same here. They are scheduling intervals in their week, in their month, whatever, to recall knowledge. And what'll happen over time is you'll space this out enough to where you'll do things like predict the ending of a case. You'll predict what a judge is going to say. That is how, when you and I speak about things calmly, excuse me, or with confidence, it's because you and I have spaced it out over so much time that the answers have always been consistently the same. You can, of course, be wrong, and that's a good thing. You can be frustrated by your pursuit of knowledge. That's equally a good thing. But it's not the right or wrong that's important. It's the space. It's the revisiting of it. It's the R plus R equals R. It's and that's immediate. It's after a month of checking it out again, then you just spin the model back. All right, I haven't read a case in a week, but instead of visiting it weekly and just wrote, kind of as a rote practice, going in and reading it, whatever our topic is, I'm going to set a reminder on my phone that in 90 days time, I'm going to continue my study, but I'm going to throw a scenario out for our class. That's actually what I do as an instructor in our own academies. I have reminders on my phone every 3 weeks as we're doing scenarios. One of their skills night, I put up, their skills for the day, what their memory palace is going to be or what their memory is going to be. Then I just write a problem on the board. And that's spaced recall for them. And it's about every 3 weeks on my phone. I can tell the students that are working these repetitions or not, because over time they start to get confidence, and then all of a sudden, by the end of 20 weeks or so, they're correcting each other, which is evidence to me that this is clearly working.
No, agree. And while you were saying that, I was thinking we have a calendar that we've toyed around with our recruit classes that has a topic review. It's like a topic review calendar,
Hmm.
and so but we're building that for the recruits. I just think we need to probably push it a little bit more. But when I was first doing that, I just went into Excel and I put the date that they were going to have the class, and then I did like +3 for one column, +7. So it prepared those dates
Mm.
so that if you took penal code, then it was going to have a little calendar reminder
Ah,
3 days. So, and again, not to get too techie, but some people like, well, how would I do that? Or what are some ideas? And it worked pretty well. We're just not, I think, pushy enough with having them sort of follow that calendar.
mm.
But also, I think paired with that is the tools, so to speak,
Yeah,
that they can use, whether it is the you know, go on to Quizlet and do some flashcards or take this practice test, um, or read this case
yeah,
study like you had pointed out. So how about like their own little personal, I don't say toolkit or notebook, or
yeah.
I've I used to have little notebooks for cool phrases that I would read in a book or case law. And I guess technology has sort of, I think it's actually made it worse because I hang on to everything.
Yes,
But
yes,
if you can keyword search, and I was like, I remember I had a note on that somewhere.
yeah.
And so I think like Google Docs or Evernote or OneNote or just something that you can go back and refer to, because and one of our other themes, need to know and need to reference.
Hmm.
Sometimes being able to go back and pull it up. It's like, I remember in force science class, they were talking about, perception time or whatever. And may not remember the, like, for instance, 0.25 seconds on average, but you can go back and pull that up.
Ah,
And, but the more you retrieve it, even if it's retrieving it off a piece of paper, you can, I think it's going to start to get sticky with into your brain. But
yeah. Well, and
um,
what is a patrol bag for? What is what's a briefcase for, or a filing cabinet for? It's for you to go and collect resources from. And you and I both use these as, and I recommend our listeners who are trainers do this too. Um, one of the parts of I'm not just trying to bring back crime scene, but yeah, I mean, you want to know how you defeat the? Well, I work at an agency that has a freaking crime scene unit. Bunch of MacGyvers that come in and do the crime scene for me. Well, you want to learn something from it? Well, you create a checklist, a reference list for, hey, okay, we can modify it. We have a crime scene unit, so cool. Take the duties that you're required, that you're responsible for as a patrol officer, and build a checklist to be better at your initial response, your follow up, your initial photography, whatever. Create a checklist and then keep it. Literally keep it and revisit it. Um, there are things from TDCA manuals that I use in my investigations from my time as a DA investigator. Um, there are things like your memory palace for 1403 that I have been in live conversations with officers about that I've walked through. I see it as, because I think about the world sometimes in imagery, is I'm reaching inside of my patrol bag, my toolkit, as you said before. And these are forms. I mean, for goodness sakes, these are things that now with Siri or AI, whatever, that you can just quite literally speak into a device and create your own checklist, and forever you have something to reference. I guess being that it's organized and somewhat, well, not somewhat, it should be organized and retrievable from the right context.
Yeah, I would love to do sort of an exploration of organizing information for retrieval. So if you'll bear with me for a second,
Please.
couple of things that kind of popped into my mind when we were or when you were talking about this. Um, you said 1403, and I can spout that out like it's like comes out smooth as butter, I guess, because I've done it so many times. But what's interesting to me, just some real world brain workings.
Mm,
You know, yesterday I was gonna fire up the smoker to for my second pass at these what I would say tasty chicken thighs,
mm,
and it's a good thing I wrote down what I did the first time, because and it wasn't really like a week ago that I did this. Like, I don't remember the temperature, I don't remember the time. I had to go pull up what I had written. Now, maybe over time with repetition, but I think it's one of those examples is like, well, you wrote that down, so I don't know that the brain is like, oh, we must remember that it's 300 degrees for an hour and a half, because it filtered that out. And I think that if you're writing it down, that's good because you can go back to it.
mm.
But I think that maybe there's something to it. If I'm writing it down, does the brain go, well, I don't, I don't really have to hang on to this. It's not as important as maybe some of the other stuff. But I don't know that. I think I need to explore that a little more because now I find it very interesting.
Yeah, well, and
But
there is actually a good there's a good article that I we can put up on our website, is and that's where we, not to harken back too far to our one of our episodes, but that's why we coined the phrase and remind our instructors that we're teaching is learning happens later. So for those folks that want to write notes, it's a comfort thing. It's like having a blanket or a teddy bear. You're writing notes because that's what you're trained to do, and it makes you feel engaged and comfortable. But there's not a lot of evidence that it gets you past the working memory side. You know.
no, I agree. The one other thing that I wanted to um, follow up on what you were saying is don't be afraid of checklists. And I give the example sometimes in class. I'm trying to finish up my private pilot license, and um, it's kind of like if I were to invite you to go on a flight, and I'm like, well, let's just go to the airport. We'll jump in the plane and take off. We're not going to bother checking the fuel or walking around the plane. There's not a there's not anybody going to take you up on that offer. So, because we recognize the importance of checklists, and
Mhm.
um, there's a great book too on checklists called the Checklist Manifesto. If you ever get a chance to check that out, if you haven't, um, but kind of back on track here. Um, why are we not, especially early on, just working off a checklist when we can? When the scene is slow and controlled,
Mhm.
and I'm trying to gather information for a report, I'm not reinventing a wheel.
No.
It's the same information that we need to gather every single time. And we need to do it with precision and consistency. And a checklist will allow you to do that.
Mhm.
If it's a search and seizure check, if it's just for reference, I need to pull out my little reference pocket card that I I wrote down and laminated,
Yeah.
or it's a step by step in gathering information from people.
Ooh.
I just don't see how you can go wrong with that. And over time, it probably becomes um, almost second nature. But if it doesn't, it's still there. It's still available to
Mhm.
you. Because I'm never going to go and try to fly an airplane without running a checklist.
Oh, yeah, when you
Because
started talking.
I know what it is.
Yeah,
It's locked into my brain. I've done it so many times. There's plenty of repetition of that,
yeah.
but I'm not willing to risk life or limb um, by
Mm.
just blowing off doing the checklist. And I think in policing or other areas as well, but I think in policing we should certainly kind of think about following that model.
Yeah, I feel like, if a plumber came to my house just quickly, I know we need to get back to adding more because we have more to add to this checklist. I feel like if a plumber came to my house and said, "Hey, look, I just graduated from plumber school," or whatever, and did everything off of a checklist and checked everything perfectly, I think that plumber did amazing. But maybe that plumber thinks, "Ah, crap, my customer thinks that I don't know what I'm doing." Maybe that's one of the reasons that a police officer doesn't want a checklist is because there's a need to want to remember and a need to want to look fluid. And if I didn't see my FDO using checklists, then clearly that might be bad if I do. But I can tell you damn straight that if I read Miranda in the field, it was off of a card so the camera can see it. And if I did field sobriety testing, it was off of the back of the leader's clipboard with a dry erase marker. And I checked every single clue on there. For the same reason that I think about the plumber coming to my house, I'm actually happy that you were like, all right, check this. All right, well that's not it. Check that. I don't know. It's a great question. Now my brain's spinning, but I promise you, I won't hold our podcast hostage to that to that idea.
So, what would be your sort of maybe next checklist item for retention?
Well, it might be one of the most important, but probably one of the last because I think we got a really good one. Is to integrate it into your daily. There is a difference. You said earlier. There's 100% a difference between practitioners and instructors. You and I get quality reps at this 3 or 4 times a year, times however many students. But for the student who is going to use it in the field, um, yeah, you can train it, you can do scenarios, but how about in a discussion role where we don't just talk about the topic, we talk about the training and its quality and things. So bring it up into a briefing. An FTO can bring it up during training, or just having squad type discussions, right, where we just have a little debriefing topic at your next roll call. You know, if I'm the salty sergeant as I was years and years and years ago, and I would have FTO, I wouldn't just focus on the hey, this is our burglary areas. I would say, hey guys, these are our burglary areas. Plus, uh, what do you think about curtilage or whatever?
Right.
That is one methodology is to incorporate it as a less consequential discussion piece.
So, what about reflecting on it? I mean,
Ooh.
is that sort of lofty that we think we're gonna spend some time reflecting. Well, but if you're using it, you think you're going to start to see maybe some of your behavior change or your tactics change
Mhm.
given the topic. Depends on the topic. I think a better way to say that, but um, I mean, does it change how you articulate things in your reports? You mentioned curtilage, and would an advanced class or just simply revisiting it after you've sort of navigated your way through that topic in the academy, does it
Mhm.
improve the way you do police work? And
Mm.
maybe you notice that in yourself, or maybe someone notices it and say, "Hey, man, your reports have gotten a whole lot better. What gives here?" Well, because I went to this training, or I've been practicing based on what I learned in Blue to Gold, or whatever class that sort of fits the bill related to the topic. But
Yeah.
I don't know. You think that's lofty, or do you think that I mean, I think we both kind of probably do that. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna have to say I'm probably looking at this in a little different light than I did before a class or a discussion. We constantly have discussions with one another and
Yeah.
probably change perspective, or some little spark
Oh,
occurs.
yeah.
So
Well, no, I don't think it's lofty at all. I think we live in a world where self auditing is required, especially how consequential on our side the instruction, and on the other side a police officer's actions has dire consequence potentially. It's just a necessity. I see the reflection as self auditing, and you and I both know that we live in a world that audits constantly.
yeah, absolutely. Well, as we sort of near the end of this, would you mind maybe summarizing sort of what we talked about? And I said, again, my brain's in checklist mode right now,
Yeah.
though. So maybe a summary or a checklist of things, takeaways, maybe even some call to action if you're looking to do better as an instructor or retain better as a student.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think I appreciate that opportunity because I this has been a really great um, episode for me personally to go back and self reflect on some of the ways that I attend training because not to forget the theme at all. This is not wasting even that check the box training, whatever it is. It's just not wasting good training. And so yeah, so the way that I see it, the first for our listeners, if you're get a pen, here's your call to action. Get a dadgum pen and a dadgum piece of paper and write this down.
You mean like cops are supposed to have in their
Right, right.
pockets?
And if you and I don't see that pen and paper, we're going to make you do push-ups, um, or at least our own two.
Wrong academy, sorry.
Oh crap! Well, sorry.
Hmm.
I'm going to take my drill instructor hat off now. I One, you have to immediately reinforce it, and the key here is 24 to 48 hours, 1 to 2 days. If you really want to hang on to it, you write it, you teach it to somebody else. R plus R equals R. Repetition is to reread it, revisit it. Retrieval, re explain it, and then retain it might also mean you're having to rework it a little bit. So that's first. The second is apply it in real time. Whether you're a student or an instructor, within a week, within 1 week, run a scenario, um, make reports up, whatever it is, tabletop, whether you're a student or an instructor, run it as a physical scenario, not tabletop is good. It would help, but run it as a scenario. The third is in the reinforcement space, but also is to schedule, literally schedule within a week to 3 months, 90 days. Schedule spaced recall over time. All right, I took force science. We learned about the. I'm just throwing this out there. The reactionary gap, and so within at least a week to 3 months, we're going to continuously run drills where we keep distance and that, right? That's just one example. And I see that as most of the time. If you're in a class that has a cohort style, set the dadgum alarm on your phone to randomly. It doesn't have to have context to revisit this stuff. That's so we're at immediately reinforce. We're at applied in real time, schedule spaced recall number three, and then this is the my cues number four. It's build a freaking toolkit, right? This is the thing that you've been teaching people for years, which is have a reference guide or a toolkit where I can reach into that proverbial patrol bag and have something, something I can pull from. I'm on the scene of a burglary, and here are the list of information I need to collect before my crime scene unit gets here, for instance, right? The fourth is reflecting to reinforce. Make sure that you're normalizing reflection, whether it's in your FTO, your roll call, peer discussions, whatever. Normalize reflecting, because reflecting weekly or monthly or whatever you're going to do gives you a sort of spaced recall, but not, it doesn't work off the same mechanism as spaced recall does for the necessity of retention. This is long term, we're talking about here, months and years later. And the last thing is in the same space in reflection is normalizing exploration, as you said before. And ask yourself, kind of a part two of reflection, what has changed about me? Go to a supervisor, go to somebody else and say, hey, look, since since I've been taking these trainings and you've been spending all your money on me, can you tell, whether on performance evaluations or not, can you tell that my behavior has changed? Can you see that there's an increase in productivity, or my reports are being kicked back less? And this should be done, 1 to 2 weeks later after the training's done. You need to take some time to put this into play, maybe even a month, whatever, and really hold yourself accountable to the knowledge of that training. This is the checklist to do as for responsible students, effectively.
You know, when you said that last part, I was thinking about um, before I retired. One of our requirements was if you were going to attend training, you had to come back and share what you learned.
Mm,
It was part of the approval process because we're just I I can't have training wasted. I think we do that a lot.
yeah,
So we go to these classes and it just sort of lingers around and never gets used. So I'm thinking, as we sort of get ready to wrap this up, I'm going to take that sort of checklist and I'll put it in the podcast description because
awesome.
I'm looking at this. It's RARUNR, right? And so retain it, apply it, reinforce it, use it in the field, normalize it, and reflect on it.
Yeah,
And for those who didn't break out the pen and paper,
how dare you?
I'll yeah, I'll dump that into the podcast description when we do an upload because I think we're preaching checklists. Let's give them one that they could take and make some use out of.
Well, and honestly, Blue to Gold, Force Science, Alert, all those guys, they should be sending us some T-shirts and some checks, because we've just increased their students' viability, for how students are going to take their classes, even our own. Because this checklist is a wonderful way to make sure that you're not wasting, that you're
Yeah,
not
we,
doing.
we we should probably start handing that little checklist out at all of our classes and to our recruits and where
Absolutely,
we go and guest instruct. But
absolutely,
well, you want to take us home here?
absolutely.
Uh,
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I appreciate this episode, and I hope the listeners, of course, we enjoy, um, we enjoy giving the listeners something they can take away from our podcast, not just something that's a good listen. And we all know that everybody loves listening to our voices; it calms them down. But our my wrap up message is as always is please engage with us in the comments. Engage with us via info@policetraining.com. Visit our website, policetraininghq.com. if you need resources. We know August is coming up. We've got a whole slew of classes that we mentioned last time, and several different agencies that were coming up. More specifically, we have a basic instructor in Weatherford in July, and then once again in August, we have an advanced instructor in Weatherford. Weatherford's been gracious enough to do that. Southlake is I think we're probably in the last stages of finalizing dates there, and with Mansfield Police Department as well. So with that, um, as always, my final call to action is stay safe and train hard.
Thanks for tuning in.